Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for all being here. I'm Cherie Scott, and I am the host of Talking Food in Maine, Intimate Conversations, and our focus this season was women in innovation in food. And when I came up with the theme for the series, literally the first person that came to my mind was Maine's candy queen, right? Kate McAleer, Bixby Chocolate. When you think about everything Kate has done in terms of how she started the business to where she is today, thank you very much, it's all innovation. And she's done it in the hardest way you can possibly take a path to building this brand, and because that's how Kate is. There's no shortcuts, and you're gonna learn about all the grit and grind behind how she built Bixby Chocolates with her mom and her dad, who are not here, by the way, today, but they're taking care of a chocolate machine that needs to be fixed. So, but we're gonna have Kate out tonight, so without further ado, please give me a warm, warm welcome to Kate McAleer, Maine's Candy Queen. Come on out, Kate.
Thank you.
Have a seat. How are ya?
Good, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. You smell good, you smell like chocolate.
My perfume of choice.
Yes, it's wonderful. So, so you got some good news recently, right?
Yes.
Tell us about the Good Food Awards.
Absolutely. So we won a Good Food Award for our creme brulee bar, which is really exciting. It's a national competition, and I think there were over 2,000 entries, and we submitted the creme brulee bar, which was a micro batch creation, and it became a winner nationally. So I head to San Francisco in 2 weeks, if it doesn't get canceled, to receive the award.
That's exciting. And I heard that, congrats. So I love the whole idea of Good Food Awards and the fact that you're trying to do so much good with your chocolate, right? Can you tell us a little bit about, the whole sort of start in your life, back to when you were a kid in Warwick, New York, with your mom and dad. You're the only child at that point, I'm assuming. So tell us about your family.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have 3 older half siblings, but I'm my parents' only child, and I grew up in the Hudson Valley, but grew up coming to Maine, and it was a really great childhood where my parents took me on all their business trips and was exposed to a lot of different things I think that maybe normal kids aren't necessarily exposed to, decided to pursue, like everyone at the time, a college degree. I went to NYU for my undergrad, studied liberal arts, which my dad always said you can get a liberal arts degree and then figure out what you're really going to do. So
tell us about NYU, right? Because obviously you moved into the city.
Yep.
You got caught up in, being a college kid, and you were busy, and then something really sort of transformational happened in your life. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in freshman in college, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. So that became a pivotal moment in all of our lives, where we really took a look at our food, what were we eating, and I kind of really became focused on organic and natural foods. And I was also playing on the golf team. I think that's a picture there. So when golfing, for example, there's candy bars all over the place, but they're full of crazy ingredients. So I started reading all the packaging and ingredients, and there's some not so great things. So that always stayed with me. And then, I was pursuing a master's degree and kind of did a quarter life pivot and said, I think I need to revisit where I'm going and where I'm headed, and thought about food and the intersection of food, history, culture, and how could I make change. And again, chocolate and candy is a really interesting category where there hadn't been a lot of innovation. There weren't a lot of organic and natural options 10 years ago. So kind of the idea to start an organic chocolate company came to life post-college.
During your master's degree?
When you were doing a couple years, right? But thinking about, this might be a good time to dive head into starting a business because you don't have as many commitments as down the road. So it was an interesting time. It was a lot of risk, And a lot of people thought that was a really crazy idea. Maybe you should stick to the normal brick road. But I thought, well, I want to give it a real try. I want to see if I can bring to market something different and differentiated. So started prototyping what became the first Bixby product, which was the Bixby Bar. Yeah. And I had always heard, in order to launch a business, you have to have pre-sales. So pre-sold the concept to Whole Foods Market at the time, which was before Amazon had acquired Whole Foods. They were extremely interested in startup and innovation. That was.
So tell us a little bit about your mom, right? Because your mom at this point, I guess she was retired. She had a summer home in Maine.
Well, my mom's family has ties to Spruce Head, Maine. So my mom had.
And your mom's name's Donna.
Yep, my mom's name's Donna. I should have said that. I spent a lot of summers and holidays coming to Maine, and then my parents wanted to retire to Maine, and we'd heard that the food culture was just amazing. Did a lot of market research on the fact that there's MAFCA, the oldest state organic certifying agency, as well as just a great, authentic food movement. So we originally started the business in New York State, where we were from, and then we moved it to Maine and landed in a food incubator in Belfast, Maine.
Oh, right. So that's a really great story. So just to be in all transparency, Kate and I've had this conversation a couple of years ago when she was on my podcast, and you kind of explained the whole journey to me and how you guys went from Warwick, New York to Belfast, Maine. It was a little bit of a detour there, but tell us a little bit about that whole process and then how you guys source your chocolate and how it all came to be.
Absolutely. So I think when you're starting a business, you want to start nimbly, and there was this shared food incubator with so many great startup food companies, many of whom I still know, and we had 500 square feet and started our production in Maine in that capacity. And it was quite a journey from there. That food incubator closed, so we had to find another location, which we found through working with economic development directors. And so it's always a story of perseverance. You have to keep finding the next solution to the burning problem. But in 2018, we set out to become the first bean-to-bar chocolate maker in Maine, which was a whole new level of complexity and research and development. So there's chocolatiers and chocolate makers.
So there's an actual difference there.
Yes.
So can you tell
I'm
us
explain the difference.
What the difference is?
A chocolatier sources chocolate. That's how we started. A chocolate maker makes chocolate. So we actually went through the whole process of sourcing the cocoa bean. So chocolate comes from the tree, Theobroma cacao, which grows along the equator of the world. And being the first, you have to kind of pioneer all sorts of things, like the Department of Agriculture. How do we license that? MAFCA even, how do we certify that as organic? They're very familiar with coffee, which has some similarities, but yet cocoa is incredibly different. So,
why is it different though? Is it because it's coming from places that, like you were saying, you were explaining to me what
with the pod, I don't know. So this is fermenting cocoa beans here, but the fresh cocoa pod has wet fruit inside, and they have to harvest the beans with a machete by hand and crack open these pods and pull the beans out. And then the beans have to be fermented, which is an interesting process it develops precursors for cocoa flavor because fresh cocoa, we'll call it, doesn't really taste like chocolate. It tastes more fruity, like a lychee fruit or tropical with hints of cocoa. And a lot of cocoa growing countries actually they don't eat chocolate in the way that we understand it as a more Western developed product. It's more consumed as that fruit or as a beverage.
Really? So how would they consume it there?
So a lot of times they would dry the beans in a rudimentary fashion and kind of crush them up and make kind of the equivalent of a hot chocolate or a drinking chocolate with spices.
Kind of like the Mayans.
Correct, yeah. So the Mayan and Aztecs were one of the first cultures to consume chocolate. Right. And that Central America was the origin of the cocoa tree, which was then, through a lot of history and colonialism, put mostly in West Africa. So like 90% of the world's chocolate is coming from West Africa with shady circumstances. So when we set out to create a company, I really wanted to have a conscientious aspect to what we were doing, knowing where the beans came from and who was growing the beans. So to become the first bean-to-bar chocolate maker, we had to find really good beans. So we sourced from Haiti, Guatemala, Dominican Republic, and Belize predominantly. So that's Central and South American demographic, and we pay above the commodity market price for cocoa because there's a lot of issues around cocoa, and I think that there's been a disconnect between our chocolate and where does it come from and how is it grown, and a lot of times there might be a preconception that it literally comes from one of the big chocolate companies. You know what I mean? That
like
there's
Hershey
not,
or
that it isn't a fruit or an agricultural product. So that's been the big journey.
I think what's really fascinating about your journey, and I'm sure all of us are kind of, shaking our heads going, wow, like this is a really interesting sector for you to kind of take that deep dive because you're going up against the Goliaths of chocolate and, the Hershey's and Mars of the world. And now you're doing it with this sort of moral compass with chocolates with a conscience. So how are you trying to differentiate yourself from the Goliaths of chocolate so that you could actually have a voice that resonated, right?
Well, I don't think we're going to take on the big chocolate companies because they're just so ginormous. They're multi-billion-dollar conglomerates.
Sure.
So I really took the path of more luxury, premium, and differentiated. So we created a whole line of vegan products. We created gluten-free options. We also source a lot of Maine ingredients. So one of our innovations were our smoothie bars, which you have here, and that's a vegan white chocolate product. So they're not white chocolate because the color is coming from the natural ingredients, but we make one with Maine blueberries. This is golden milk. So really trend-forward, progressive flavor profiles that the big companies probably wouldn't bother with, but we really like to push forward innovation and just like the creme brulee bar, right? Like creme brulee is one of the #1 trending desserts worldwide. And so the thought was, how can you translate that into a chocolate bar? And it became a delicious product.
I'd love to sit at your kitchen table and hear all the conversations that Kate and her mom and dad come up with, and your chef Bonnie.
Bonnie's
and then you guys just kind of get
creative.
these bouts of inspiration. You go into the factory and you just try out. How did the creme brulee bar come together? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so Bonnie and I were talking about white chocolate as one might do. So white chocolate, just some data points, is kind of the least popular chocolate in America, and it has this perception of not being real chocolate, which I can clarify. So white chocolate is a form of chocolate. It just has a different part of the cocoa bean, which is predominantly made from the cocoa butter, which is the fat found in the cocoa bean. So it's just a different part of the bean used in the process, and that's why it's white versus brown. And so white chocolate, in the craft industry is sort of poo-pooed upon as like not as good as dark chocolate. And I really like white chocolate. So I thought about how can we innovate white chocolate and not just make another plain white chocolate bar. And so we had done some market research and thoughts, and then our chef Bonnie, came out of the culinary restaurant space, and we talked about creme brulee and how delicious that is, and that's like white chocolate. And then how can we incorporate that amazing glass top that you crack with creme brulee into the chocolate bar? So it was just sort of a conversation, and then research and development and execution. That's pretty much how we do it.
That's pretty cool. And then, like, when you came out with your first line, because I think I have so that's the actual factory.
That's where we make everything.
Space, right? And before it was Bixby's headquarters, it was actually an ice factory in Rockland, right?
For years, I think over 120 years, it was for ice production.
Right, but it was already zoned for food.
In Maine, historically, ice used to be harvested from lakes, and so it was an interesting history to research that, but it's a funky old building.
So you walk in there and you look at this big old building and you're like, okay, this is going to be our home, because you're coming from 500 square feet in Belfast.
Well, I had to have a lot of vision.
Tell us about that.
It was interesting. I think you have to kind of you have to be looking at right now and then looking forward. So one of the key things that was a differentiator is that it had a loading dock, so we could receive pallets,
Right.
which became particularly important. So it had a loading dock. It was it had space to grow, which is always important, and had a lot of insulation because of the ice.
Yeah, because you have to store all these cacao beans
Yeah.
and all that. But tell us a little bit about your factory and how you had set it up. Like, this is 10 years ago, you were starting out.
Yeah, when we started,
Right.
we had bowls.
had bowls?
No equipment. No, bowls. We had
Handcrafted.
hand tempered, and tempering is the process of like making chocolate workable, for lack of a better term. And now we have four or five production lines, as well as our laboratory kitchen and our bean to bar production.
Amazing.
It's 10,000 square feet. When we started, we hand wrapped every bar, and then we used to hand wrap.
Yeah.
I
And
was
there's
like,
your mom
yeah,
sticking
just
all the
hand deed
labels.
stamping. And then we got this flow wrapper, which is a mechanized way of wrapping candy bars because hand wrapping is not a sustainable model. And that was actually funded by a loan from Whole Foods Market. So they give local loan producers. I'm one of the only in Maine that received one. So that was really exciting.
That's the
And-
one thing I love about you, Kate, is that if there is money on the table
Yeah.
anywhere, Kate will find it. Kate will find the money
Yeah.
and she will write the grant.
I have a
and-
pastime of looking for, I'll call it
Yeah.
startup capital.
Yeah.
Because it's expensive to start a business, and it's also expensive to capitalize it, because it wasn't as if we weren't making anything. I think a lot of food startups, co-manufacture or have other people make their products.
Right.
The harder way is to make your own products, as you know.
Yes, yes.
So we started out, really small, and built up equipment over time. I still don't even have my most desired, I have dreams of more automation mostly. And I'm going to get there over time, but
Right.
one step at a time, you have to
Yeah.
work with what you've got and continue to build on. But I remember our Maine sea salted caramels became so popular that we had to get a whole separate line just for caramel production because everyone loves caramel with sea salt, Maine
How could
sea
you not
salt.
love- Yeah, and Maine sea salt on top of it. Here's a
Yeah.
really neat picture of you.
That's
Is that tempering chocolate?
No,
or
that's our
what is-
stone grinder.
Oh,
So
stone
the
grinding,
process
okay.
of making chocolate from the bean, you first source the beans, roast the beans, crack open the beans to separate the inside nib from husk. And here I'm putting in nibs into what's called a melanger. And this is like the ancient way of making chocolate. So this is how they made it in the 1890s with these giant stone grinders. Chocolate making is really, there's giant scale
Yeah.
and then there's small scale. So we're very much small scale, and the grind, that's one of my original pictures. The stone grinder, it's a rustic approach to making chocolate in the sense that you have to grind it for up to 3 days to execute the particle size that would give you the feel and smoothness of chocolate, whereas mass production chocolate, they're making it in hours.
Right.
So we really take more of the artisan
Artisanal.
approach.
So everyone here is probably going, okay, you went to school for Asian studies.
Right.
Where in the world did you learn how to do all this?
Well,
how did this
yeah,
come
when I
about?
took my whole life pivot and said, I'm going to start a chocolate business, I went to a pastry program in New York instead of continuing my master's, and was sort of thinking about in what way. I thought food, but I wasn't sure how. And then there's different segments in pastry. You do bread and you do chocolate's one of the segments, and we spent a week on chocolate, and I was just wait, I have so many more questions. Can we spend more time on chocolate? And so then I staged at a chocolate company in New York, and then it was all about chocolate. It just became
That was it.
that was it. It
Yeah.
was going to be chocolate, and I had to think about in what capacity. And never in my wildest dreams would I think we'd have this many products, because when we started we had 3.
Wow.
Which
and
is
that was essentially
the
anatomy of the
candy snack
Bixby
bar.
bar.
I was
Wow.
let me take on the biggest category in chocolate. the candy category. It's savage. It's very competitive.
So how did you go about this? Like,
Yeah.
were you sitting down one night thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to go up against Hershey and Mars? Like, how did
probably just naive blindness.
Which is the best way to
like,
do it,
I'm so innovative. Yeah, it's hard because it's still really challenging. The Bixby Bar is still one of our most popular products, but the candy category is basically dominated by two, you can figure out, brands, and you just can't compete against their dollars and spending and whatnot. So we try and find, like the alternative market, so more of the sporting good or areas where people are going to care about the values and the benefits. So like health food stores or LL Bean or REI or those sort of avenues where premium is more preferred.
Yeah.
But yeah, my concept was real chocolate, real nuts, real fruit. That was
real food, like
real ingredients, not fake flavors, no artificial colors and preservatives. Because there's a lot of dyes in candy that are totally unnatural. Again, that's the whole natural approach to the natural ingredients to deliver natural color. Right. So you can go down this rabbit hole where you're trying to make the cleanest product possible, and I think I've had an interesting balance where I've been too innovative. And that's not exactly where the market is. So
tell us one of your big, massive fails.
Yeah.
Like, what didn't work for
So one
you?
of the first flavors was a dark chocolate bar with Maine blueberry, of course, Maine blueberry, and black pepper. So black pepper and blueberry do complement each other, but even today, no one's ready for that bar. No one wants black pepper with blueberry. So
I wonder why. I'm really curious. I'm going to go try some. So I'll just basically take blueberries and crush black pepper on them, eat a piece of chocolate, and see what happens. That's kind of how you went at it.
You could try that.
Yeah.
You could try that.
I mean, I don't have the Bixby touch, but I'm just saying, the flavor.
There's a lot of health benefits to pepper too.
Yeah,
so,
and blueberries.
But same thing with cinnamon. I think cinnamon is an underdog. A lot of spices are, in my opinion, underdogs, not appreciated in the American palate yet. But another example is just that when I first started, everything had tree nuts, because tree nuts are super healthy,
right?
Like almonds and walnuts. No one likes walnuts.
In chocolate?
In chocolate, right? Most people really just want peanut butter, peanuts, peanut, and chocolate is like the number one nut combination. I guess it's more of a European flavor profile to have hazelnut or almond. Almond might be number 2 after peanut, but I've always been a huge fan of hazelnuts, and I still think that's kind of underappreciated.
You gonna come out with your own Bixby Nutella spinoff?
Yeah, I've actually been working on one. Yeah, but I'm waiting for the jar shortage to settle down in the world.
Supply chain nightmares.
Yeah, it's really hard to get glass.
So you have to put that in a jar. You could not put it in a pouch. You could do those little shot kind of things.
That's really specialized equipment. I think the old-fashioned jar would be
neat looking.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid plastic too, so glass would be the preferred. But I've prototyped kind of a Nutella, with our bean to bar chocolate. I think Dominican Republic origin with hazelnuts from
amazing.
Oregon. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they do have a lot of hazelnuts in Oregon.
Yeah, we try and source as American as possible with our ingredients. So Maine blueberries, Maine maple syrup, Maine honey.
Where do you find time to make the phone calls, let alone find out how it's all going to show up on that loading dock one day when you order it?
You have to do a lot of, persistent begging. Back in the day, no one wanted to bother selling to a startup company, and I really have to beg and prod and say, well, I'm gonna be bigger one day. Please sell to me. I think you have to have a bit of charm and charisma because you're so small and insignificant. It really kind of takes that personal touch for people to kind of buy into it. But Wyman's, for example, was I went knocking on their door can I please have some dried blueberries? Same thing, with various partners. I think you just have to kind of keep knocking and keep trying and keep persisting
because as you're innovating too, your supply chain is probably growing larger and larger, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just a process of constant follow-up, constant saying, I'm really going to do nice things with this. Please work with me. That sort of conversation.
Don't you know I'm like the candy queen of Maine? So tell us a bit about the certifications, because this is really important. I feel like, the whole world is focused on like all the labels of, kosher, gluten-free, plant-based, vegan, all of those sort of boxes that you have to check off. Like, not only does it have to be an outstanding piece of candy, but now it has to fit all these boxes for it to be marketable. And so there's so many other challenges with that. And then you have to procure all those pieces like we're just talking about, right? So the journey from where it starts to where it ends, it's huge. And then on top of that, you have all these audits to deal with. I mean, this is the business part of things, right? It's probably not the most fun creative part, but this is what moves your business forward. So why did you decide to go through all of these opportunities and obstacles in front of you?
Just to make it challenging. No. I reflect back on, I was really trying to be incredibly innovative, and I thought the third-party certifications would help me differentiate. I think that there's, certain developments that have happened from like a federal perspective. For example, like when we started, there was no federal standard for gluten-free.
Really?
So you could only be gluten-free if you were verified by a third party. But now the FDA has like a whole process to test for gluten-free, and that's like easier than the third party audit. And then to become certified organic is incredibly intensive in terms of the paperwork and the annual overview of all your labels and everything. So, I'm a firm believer in organic food, and I was really passionate about that. So the passion got me through, and then also I really hooked my dad into helping me with all these certs. So he had a lot of like quality assurance. He came out of healthcare, so he was sort of used to these processes. And actually, my father and I became like the food safety people for the company. We had to get our HACCP certifications, and HACCP is like a whole food safety plan. We had to get our gluten-free, our organic, and our kosher. So we're certified kosher, which is a whole process unto itself as well.
Wow.
And so like every ingredient has to be vetted, and it has to be certified gluten-free or certified organic if it's both, and kosher. And so we have a lot of documentation all across the board. So basically, moral of the story, if something is certified organic, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I think that, I was really trying to be progressive. I'm not sure the market is entirely there yet for all those certifications, but certain certifications mean a lot to different demographics. So.
Right, and you want to make your chocolate is marketable to as wide a group as
possible. I think kosher is a great example. I don't think there's a huge kosher population in Maine, but there's a huge kosher population in Boston, New York, more metro areas to which we sell, and that certification matters.
Yeah. So, this was your first lineup, and then from this lineup, you basically went to the bites, right? You went to smaller
so the Bixby
bites.
Bar was our first product, and then from there we made bites. And the evolution was to get a pouching machine. So there was a big consumer shift away from like individual units or single serve to like more shareable approach. So the pouching really helped us diversify, and you're showing pictures of
I want to show and sort of walk everyone through the whole entrepreneurial network of Maine, because it's a huge part of your success, right? Because the reason why you picked Maine, of course, there was some family and the history of your family being here, but also you did a lot of research into Maine's entrepreneurial ethos before you basically came here.
I do a lot of research.
You do
usually.
Do a lot of research. I think that college education and all the research. But we're looking at Don Gooding here. Tell us a little bit about how you came into the whole network and where it's brought you today from 8 years ago.
Absolutely. So I really had sort of learned about like accelerators or entrepreneurial support networks. And when coming to Maine, I did some research, and was referred by economic development also into, first it was the Top Gun program, which is put on by the Maine Center for Entrepreneurial Development. It's a long name.
Yep.
They have a program called Top Gun, which you did, right? And Don Gooding, he's a picture that he used to be the head of that program.
Okay.
And then from there, the Top Gun network introduces you to, I call it the world of Maine, like business help. So I was connected into Maine Technology Institute, and then connected into
Gorham.
various competitions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, you can try these competitions, but you're probably not gonna do very well.
Yeah. So you were at Celadon Winery. You were doing a demo.
Yeah.
And tell us how that all started for you.
I've done a lot of demos. So pre-pandemic, that used to be, sampling food was how you launched a product. And I went and it was nuts. I drove to like every Whole Foods in New England and demoed personally.
It's exhausting.
Every store. Yeah. Well, because they were like, if you're going to be in the store, you have to do XYZ demos, and I wasn't going to hire anyone because couldn't afford to hire anyone, so I just did it myself.
Right.
But
you get great feedback. That's the best part, right?
You consumers are very frank with you. That was when the black pepper came out. No one wanted black pepper.
But at least you didn't go through the trouble of putting it all out into the market and then you demoed it out and you figured it out.
I think that's what it's like, direct feedback, and you can. It's hard sometimes, but really important to get. So then I competed in some competitions. So Gorham Savings Bank is a bank based in more like southern Maine, and they had a pitch competition, sort of like Shark Tank, and I applied,
And you didn't think you stood a chance at this one, remember?
No.
You were like, no.
No, because there were a lot of other kind of more established startups, but I kept my pitch super simple and really articulated how I wanted to deploy the capital if I were to win. And we bought chocolate melting tanks with that prize money. And then I think one of the key things also I forgot to mention under certification was I pursued becoming certified women-owned business, and that's a national third-party certification for women-owned businesses. Another certification every year you have to recertify, and so through the women-owned network, I learned about this pitch competition with Tory Burch, who's a fashion designer, and I applied for that, and that was a national competition, not even a state competition, and everyone was like, go participate. I'm sure you're not going to do that well, but it'll be a good experience. And went and pitched and won $100,000 from Tory Burch. So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and you're coming from Maine and you're trying to explain what you are. But I think one of the differentiators was just that commitment to making the product, making it in America, making it in Maine. That's pretty different. I think a lot of people may not realize that a lot of candy is actually not made in America anymore. It's made in Mexico or Poland or these kind of like more affordable places for the big companies to make. Even Canada makes a lot of candy. So I think that was a big differentiator. And then, I think people are more and more curious. Where is their food coming from and who's making it? So I always try and articulate that story. Yeah. So I get on these listservs and I read all of them and I figure out about these different competitions and apply.
But that's what I loved about Kate's journey is that, you could have easily gone for investment. You've definitely built a great story and a brand and it's got a great compass. So, everyone wants to jump on it, but you've kind of taken the road of, no, we're going to keep this within the family. We're going to own it. Kind of self-fund it all, and you're using the pitch competitions to leverage all of that capital, which is
and MTI and other resources, grant resources.
But at the end of the day, you own the brand, and I think there's a lot of power in having that control. It's not to say that all investment is bad investment, but at least you get to make those decisions with your mom and dad and your team.
I think also it's offered a really interesting opportunity to spend quality time with one's parents. I was reflecting back on how unlikely is it for like a millennial to be spending this much time with parents that could have been retired, but they rolled up their sleeves and jumped in to help make this kind of dream come true. And lots of hard work going into it. Like one night my dad and I spent all night making an order listening to like a podcast series because the truck was coming the next day, for example.
And then did he drive that same truck to Maryland?
Oh, yeah, there was
like
one story. He drove all the way from Belfast, Maine to Maryland, like a U-Haul truck. And then like they wouldn't let him in because it was a U-Haul truck. It wasn't like a regular tractor trailer truck. And I had to like call these people and beg in because there's like union labor that controls the docks. It's very complicated, but he like ended up persevering, and he had to wear like the special vest and unload this U-Haul truck full of chocolate because we had to get it there under this contract timeline. It was nuts. It was crazy.
I think what's wonderful too about having your mom and dad there is that this was sort of their second chapter, a whole new chapter for them, and they were getting to do this with their daughter and kind of guide you through it so you could make mistakes within boundaries and give you that support.
They certainly brought a lot to the table in the sense of like they had their own careers, but they, you know, in healthcare it's highly regulated, so they were able to help me navigate. Like I said with my dad, we did a lot of like all of our programming and certifications, which is a lot of work. A lot of people outsource that.
Yeah.
So it's been really interesting and fun to see them in like a professional capacity, but then also work in a family business. It's an interesting dynamic to be in a family business.
And I'm sure you get on each other's nerves at some point too, which is good. Definitely.
But you know, I think it's also incredibly helpful to have a family involved because they're going to stay, you know, all night and help you get that order done. So no one else would probably do that.
Yeah. Now, you won this SBA award, like literally the second year after you moved to Maine, right?
I was named Maine SBA Young Entrepreneur of the Year, yes.
Wow, that's amazing. So you've pretty much won everything across the board in terms of Maine.
Not everything, no.
Yeah, you're very humble, but you might not have won the lottery tonight, Kate, but you won everything else. Okay, so here's MaineBiz. Yeah. You were one of the people kind of listed on Shaping Maine's Economy, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, there's a list called The Next,
which
I made. Yeah, there it is.
Which is a very cool honor.
Yeah, it really is. I think the Maine presses like to follow my story. I remember we like filed a building permit when we were coming from New York to Maine, and this like reporter called me. I was still in New York. Like, I heard about like, what are you coming to Maine? What are you doing? And it was really funny because he's still around. That reporter, he learned about me through that. He said he always goes and reads all the new building permits, and that's how he gets his scoop.
That's so cool.
Yeah. He's old school. He writes for I think the Free Press now, or the Courier Gazette, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, but he got the scoop on you because he was on top of it.
Yeah,
good for him.
He did.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then we've been featured in some magazines.
I call this the altar to Kate the Great, because you walk into the factory and you walk in on the right and you see this massive wall of all of Kate's accolades, and she's so humble because you'll see her with her hat on, and there she's looking all grit, grind, and glam on her altar of Kate.
With my hairnet.
I love it. So here's another big account you scored, which is kind of cool. Like it's like the ultimate Maine dream to be in the home goods store, the LL Bean store.
LL Bean.
So what was that experience like for you when you found out you finally got the LL Bean account?
Yeah, well, I have to tell a little story. So I don't know if this was a thing in everyone's childhood, but like my dad got me an LL Bean backpack with my like initials on it for school. Yeah. So I always had my LL Bean backpack. I had this like brand affinity for LL Bean that I guess my dad created. So when we met them at like a trade show and they were expressing interest, and then we went through the whole process of onboarding with them. They're a $1 billion company, so their systems are pretty intense, and they have very specific rules, of which were a lot of hurdles to jump over.
And lots of stickers, I heard you have to
Lots of stickers, yeah. They everything has to be stickered going into LL Bean, and you have to buy the stickers through this one sticker company. Anyway, the stickers.
I see you, Kate, sitting up at night having like nightmares about stickers and floor wrappers and all these things happening.
Well, yeah, because the stickers, if you don't sticker properly, you get this evil word called a chargeback. I've learned a lot about chargebacks. It's like they bill you for your mistake. So every time I've been billed for a chargeback, I learned. I call it the hard way. But I was like so excited. I went to the headquarters and bought some bars and took a picture.
That's awesome.
No, but again, I think the excitement there is that you're getting your product in a channel where you think you're finally finding like kind of your target demographic, that the LL Bean customer appreciates, you know, quality Maine-made products.
Yeah.
So it was just a really great opportunity to kind of be there.
Yeah, it's kind of like a full circle moment. I remember, you know, Erin Flett saying the same thing when she won that LL Bean account. She's a fashion designer, as we all know, but it was a great moment for her because she wanted to work for them when she moved to Maine as a designer.
Oh, she did?
And
I
then
didn't
she ended
know that
up
story.
actually collaborating with them and, you know, creating a whole line exclusively for them with Erin Flett, which is kind of cool.
They've been really supportive of Maine startups, and the same with Stonewall Kitchen has been pretty phenomenal in terms of supporting, I call us
I see your candy there when I teach cooking lessons.
The young companies, because they're all very large now and quite successful examples of Maine companies. So
right, and you're obviously going to go down that road at some point, but for now you're trying to hold on to those.
We're the little engine that could.
I love it. So let's talk about a really, really fun night. And the reason why I love this night, as you can see in the middle, there's Melissa Kelly from Primo.
Yep.
Ima Lopez, Emily Lucchetti, Nancy Silverton, the whole lineup. These are the divas. And so tell us about how this whole diva night came together. It was Primo's 20th anniversary.
Yes.
And Melissa Kelly basically came to you and said,
well, for her 20th anniversary, she said, I want to create a chocolate bar. And I said, okay, let's.
Well, Melissa Kelly says,
yes.
You say yes.
What were you thinking, chef? So she wanted this chocolate bar made with her bar almonds. So they're these spiced rosemary olive oil almonds.
Has anyone here had them?
They're delicious.
At the bar at Primo's, the rosemary almonds?
They're pretty amazing.
They're really good.
Yeah, and then she was extremely particular about the packaging and wanted to call it the 20-carat bar.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
I said, and there it is. I said, chef, people are going to think there's carrots in this bar.
Yeah.
And she said,
and what'd she say?
That's what I want. And I said, okay.
She wanted them to think there were carrots in the candy bar?
No. She wanted 20 carrots for 20 years.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but the carrot was just like symbolic of the years. It had nothing to do with carrots.
Right. But it was a really cool kind of setup to the candy bar, right? Like she had the gold wrapper thing going on. So tell us about that whole process of how you developed the bar for her.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so she had this idea of her almonds, and then we prototyped which bean origin she most liked with the pairing of the almond, and lots of figuring that out was fun. And I think it's just a great example of collaboration. So that's been one of my themes, just looking to collaborate with so many of the great companies and people in Maine. So for example, we collaborated with Primo, we collaborate with Split Rock, which is the bourbon maker. So we infuse our cocoa nibs with their bourbon and make a bourbon-infused chocolate bar. That's pretty phenomenal. And then we also partner with Allagash, the beer company, to make, I think, the first ever Maine beer brittle. So we make a peanut brittle with Allagash beer in it.
That's so cool.
Pretty delicious.
Yeah.
And then we
the Allagash beer has Maine grains in it.
Yes,
which is so cool because Amber was here last month talking about that.
We're launching soon, as soon as the packaging will arrive, a Maine grain oat milk chocolate bar. Yum. So just trying to look at that alternative dairy market, and I don't know about everyone, but oat milk I think is the best alternative milk. So Maine grains oats are pretty phenomenal. So we've been researching and developing an oat milk chocolate bar. So no dairy milk, but oats.
And can you make drink chocolate out of it too for the holidays?
Yeah, you could.
That would be awesome.
You could.
I'll sign up for that too. That's really good. So I want to talk a little bit about this night. It was very special. So, you know, I had asked Emily, I actually asked Melissa Kelly if I could come to the dinner, but I didn't want to eat at the dinner. I wanted to be in the back kitchen where all the action was with the divas because I thought that's a scoop that nobody else is going to have, right? To see what's going on in the back. And I thought, how dare you ask Melissa Kelly that, because I can't imagine what's going on in the back of the kitchen with 7 divas and all their crew cooking this magnificent dinner. And anybody in food was at that dinner. It was amazing. But I thought it was so much fun. So I'm in the back. And of course, you know, I'm taking photos and doing interviews. And I happened to go up to Nancy Silverton. I got close enough to her to finally strike up a conversation because I didn't want to interrupt her bubble, but she just raved about the entire day that she had at Bixby Factory.
Yeah.
Like, she came in and she did this tour with all the divas, and they walked through the whole thing. So tell us when you got that call from...
Yeah, it felt like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity where Melissa hosted all these amazing, very famous female chefs at Primo for the 20th year, and they needed something to do for one of the mornings, and she said, why don't you go talk to Kate? So I was like, oh, sure, just some of my idols coming.
Right, because you grew up with your mom's cookbooks and
Nancy Silverton is incredibly famous. Yeah. And I've read her cookbooks, studied her. It was kind of surreal. It was a little bit like meeting Alice Waters at the Good Food Awards, because I had, her book for children, which was like Fanny at Chez Panisse. I don't know. It was surreal in a lot of ways, because you don't see yourself as the person interacting with your idols, and then they come and you're like, this is what we're doing. We're making like vegan white chocolate. And they're just like, really? That's so cool. And you're like, yeah, I know. That's so cool. You think it's cool. It was really neat, and just told kind of our story and how we were passionate about making, innovative chocolate, and I guess Nancy liked it.
So they all loved it, and I just remember them just having this whole experience of being in the factory, which, by the way, now is shut down, right, to visitors because of COVID. Like, you can't come in. But
we had to really take over what was our tasting room for frankly, like beer brittle production. We needed to expand and have another cooking area, and we've been making chocolate throughout the whole pandemic, and our core focus was, let's just make chocolate. Let's make as much chocolate as we can and get it out in the world, because chocolate makes everything better, at least in my opinion. So we took over that space, and we're using it for production.
Yeah. I love this, the puffin. I see you already have it up here all boxed up, ready to go. I love the fact that your packaging on the outside is just as colorful and catchy as the candy is inside, right?
Well,
with all of the different...
The puffin chocolates are really interesting. We wanted a way to give back, and so one of the initiatives off the coast of Maine is rehabilitating the puffin. Not the penguin, the puffin. Very different. And so we wanted to develop a line with Project Puffin, which is part of the Audubon Initiative. Right. And so we have a line of puffin chocolates. And it's, I wish the puffins were as popular as the lobsters, but lobsters win. Yes. It seems we are still the lobster state.
I love the whole lobster dinner idea.
We make a chocolate lobster dinner, which kind of started as a joke. It was just sort of funny, like, oh, we could make a dinner out of chocolate, make it a lobster dinner. And so we make these 1 pound chocolate lobsters with 2 peanut butter lobster claws and 2 champagne truffles, and it's just a Maine fun thing.
It's awesome. I've gifted so many of them because it's the easiest thing to just send over.
We sell so many to like the Midwest. Yeah. They're probably just dying for Maine lobster. Right. And they're like, I'll just get the chocolate version.
That's right, the next best thing. Actually, maybe even better. But yeah, I love your packaging. I love how you make everything so festive. It's not just like a really great way to gift something that's good for the earth and the planet and all the good things you're doing with it, but it's also just fun, right, to gift. And this was one of the things you came up with this year, which I thought was really cool. Yeah. Tell us about how this came around.
Well, I'd always dreamed of doing an advent calendar. I don't know, it might have been a childhood thing. I love holidays, and I love gifts. Take gifting very seriously, so an advent calendar was sort of this idea we'd been toying with, and they're quite challenging to execute because it's 24 different candies. Right. So the assembly line on that ended up being, we had to listen to a lot of Christmas music to get everyone really excited about packing 24 different things, and it's really funny. I golf with like an older woman, and she was kind of making fun of me about the fact that, like, you made an advent calendar. It can't be that hard. And then she came and saw that we were hand packing each one, and then she was like, I didn't know you were doing it by hand. And I was just like, we do everything by hand practically.
Oh my goodness.
So a hand, packed box was fun.
Luckily, it's a seasonal thing, though.
Yeah,
so it's not like you're doing it.
And
all year
then
long.
we worked with a Maine-based designer to design these great little pictographs of Maine.
They're so cute.
Making it a Maine winter theme. And then the box was printed in Farmington. So I don't know. I was just like, we need to make a Maine advent calendar, and people loved it. It was just a really fun, exciting product. And now I think we endlessly are going to be making advent calendars.
I wish you could do something for Easter too. That'd be very cool.
We make Easter Easter eggs.
Yeah, I've tried them. They're delicious.
Yeah.
They're really, really fun.
Yeah, and this is the Wild Maine Blueberry Day with Governor Mills. So we make a lot of blueberry inclusive products, and she posed with our blueberry bar. It was really fun.
I'm thinking you guys coordinated your outfits for the day. That's
well,
for sure.
I wore blue just because it seemed appropriate, and then apparently she wore blue too. So
yeah, it's like it's a great shot. Yeah.
Well, and it's really cool because the Blaine House hosts dinners with, I guess, dignitaries, and so sometimes they buy our chocolates to be at the Blaine House, which is really cool.
Nice.
And then Maine is hosting the governors, like all the governors from the states.
Oh wow, when's that happening?
In August or something.
Oh, is it like the postponed bicentennial celebration?
No,
or
I think this
or?
is a governor thing. I don't know the official term, but anyway.
So what are you doing for it?
Well, they requested Needhams for all the governors, so that's pretty cool.
And your Needhams, I heard, are not very sweet. They're like absolutely perfect.
Well, I felt like the Needham needed to be upgraded a little bit, so we dressed it up, took out some of the weird ingredients, and made it vegan so that our vegan friends could partake. And we used really good dark chocolate. So our potato coconut Needhams are really popular, and it's probably going to be a fun thing because most people that aren't from Maine don't know what a Needham is.
Yeah. What is a Needham? Tell us what it is.
It's a potato coconut candy. So Maine is, one of the biggest producers of potatoes.
Yeah.
And I guess the story goes that in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was like an excess of potato, and somehow a candy maker out of Lewiston, Auburn made a potato coconut candy and named it either after this preacher named Needham, or it was a preacher who came from Needham. There's sort of like a elusive history there.
Yeah. And that's how the name came to be.
Yeah, I think it's kind of related to Needham, Massachusetts, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. It can be cool if there's like this iconic Maine candy,
I think that is the Needham.
That.
I think that is the Needham.
Yeah, but I think you need to create the 2.0 version of that.
The 2.0.
With Bixby Chocolate. So, let's talk about, this is a big moment for you. Just won Greenlight Maine. You had competed years ago, you got voted out, and now you came in and you basically won it all, right? And it's interesting that, you've literally won every single one of these pitch competitions.
I haven't, though.
I know you say you haven't, but I think you have. But I think the ones you've lost are they sting more because you won so much. So I think you remember that.
Okay, I want to clarify. So in this picture, I'm up against, I call it the Goliaths. So there's a rocket ship company, that's raised like $40 million. And then there's like Stark Systems, which is a modular wall company for like hospital grade wall construction projects. So again, very well funded, huge companies. And then there's me with my chocolate company. It was pretty nerve wracking because you can't compete on like size, and you can't compete on like the fact that they've raised so much money. You really have to compete on like differentiation or bringing, kind of the joy that we bring to the market through our products. So I was just trying to really talk through just like, look, we make lobster dinners and we make, bourbon bars, and we have this innovative product that really speaks to kind of where the consumer is headed right now. And just trying to tell my story.
Right.
But I never in my wildest dreams thought I would win that, because I was up against a rocket ship company, which is,
rocket ship and
daunting.
really good candy.
Yeah.
But what I love about your story is that it also becomes Maine's food story, right? Because as you're evolving and you're breaking through with all these different products and product lines, and you're really doing things that are out of the box, you're helping evolve Maine's food story, right? We're going from Needham's in Maine to like vegan smoothie bars and whatever else you've come up with, brittle and all of that. And I think that's what's interesting, is that you've really moved all of that forward.
I've been a big proponent of saying that food is just as important as some other industries. And I think sometimes food gets a little bit of a rap, or like even chocolate sometimes can have some gender issues around it. Like, oh, that's cute. You're doing chocolate. Like, that's nice. It's not like it's a business or something.
Yeah. Do you feel that bias, like when you pitch, or when you're trying to get new accounts? And
well, I definitely think in the case study of Greenlight Maine, I really was very prepared. I did a lot of research and preparation, positioning myself, knowing that I know the business aspects of my business, like it is a business. I think that maybe I read into that, I'm not sure, but I certainly like to become very prepared with a lot of market research and data points to show the market viability. So I think that sometimes food does get a little rap of like, it's not a serious or big business or something.
And yet there are more Maine tastemakers than probably anything else in the state of Maine.
I think food is really important,
it's
right?
huge in Maine, agriculture. And
yeah, but also like what we're eating really matters. So I think I've definitely taken on that food businesses are real businesses. And so I told you the story that a couple times a lot of people have said, like, you're not going to win because it's food and it's not as important as technology or something. Right. So, I've definitely tried to push down some of those barriers where a lot of people were like, you're not going to get grant funding for this because it's not that important or something.
Right. And yet probably more people have eaten your Needham's than they've gone on that rocket ship. Nothing against rocket ships or technology, but I'm just saying
but it is a challenge, right? When you're competing against tech companies, it's harder, I think. And I also think that a lot of times you have to be uber prepared that in comparison. So there's more of kind of like a lot of investment around tech because people are looking for quick exits. They're looking for that ROI or that 3x return. And I think sometimes with food, it's a slower build with impact, right?
So can we talk about the fact that while Kate is doing all of this, she would never tell you this, but I'm going to tell you this, she's also studying to get her MBA in food marketing. So what is the plan for that MBA?
To finish it really soon.
But I mean, when I'm thinking about your story, like, and how it's grown in 10 years, like you just finished your 10th year. I'm assuming there's an exit strategy at some point, or maybe there isn't. Maybe you are preparing to run this company 10 years down the road with that MBA in hand.
Well, I'll give a little story on the MBA. So I always saw myself as wanting to get a master's degree. I just went about it in a couple of different ways. But when I won the Tory Burch money, there was another pot of money that Tory Burch gave to all of the fellows, not just the pitch winner. That was money you had to use towards education.
Oh, that's great.
And my parents sat me down and, over a cup of coffee, and they were like, you should put that towards an MBA. And I was just like, I don't need an MBA. I'm learning everything on the job here. And they were just definitely parenting, and they were like, you should do it. I was like, okay. So I really wanted to follow something in the food marketing space. And so I was able to do it part-time and use some of that winning money to put towards it. And I think it improved my research ability and just understanding of, how do the really big companies do marketing, and then try and apply that to, small business.
Right.
And interestingly enough, I've been like the only entrepreneur in the class, so I bring a nice small business perspective.
But what's interesting too is you're actually doing it. I'm sure there's a lot of people doing that food MBA.
I use my business as most of my
Right.
case studies in my classes.
Exactly. Like real-time illustrations. Yeah.
Other than the one project where we were given like $1 million budget for marketing.
What
and
a
I was
dream.
just like, this is not a reality, but sure, I'll pretend.
Right.
But yeah, I think, education is always a way to learn more and gain more insights. So I think that if you can find the late nights, burning the midnight oil, as I called it, trying to, complete those assignments, I'll be really excited to be done.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is that when you were in college, you were thinking about chocolate, and now when you're in chocolate, you're thinking about college, which is, it's like your life has kind of come full circle, in preparing for it.
I also probably had a lot of parental suggestions on you should always try and pursue the next level of education if you can. So
yeah, that's important. Speaking of education, let's talk about Colby, right? Because there's this resurgence in Waterville.
Yes.
Becoming this huge destination, and they're really turning things around with this confluence of art and culture and music and chocolate. Cool pretty soon. So tell us about that Sharpie signature on that steel beam there.
I went to my first beam signing.
How cool is that?
That was really cool. So that's the new Waterville Shoops Art Center that Colby College is building in Waterville, and we are going to have the concession cafe stand within there.
Oh, it's going to be a concession cafe stand, not like your store.
It's like a small cafe.
Neat.
Yeah, very small.
But with all your hot chocolates.
Yeah, we're going to have our prepared drinking chocolate, coffee, chocolates, and chocolate baked goods.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of our first retail expansion. And Colby College has been really amazing in terms of just trying to cultivate and draw together food tastemakers. So I feel really honored that we were.
So you were invited to be a part of this?
Yeah,
That's very cool.
It's been really amazing. I think that I'm really excited to be within this building because that's going to be an incredible hub of activity and museum and theater events. So I'm really excited about that.
Amazing.
It's going to be a lot of work, but I'm
so
excited
how are you going to now plan between Rockland and Waterville? Staffing,
I'm figuring all that out as we speak.
And the MBA and all of this. So does Kate find time for Kate in any of this? You're always planning for the future, but
I
do you ever
to golf? So I played golf in college, and that's I sometimes try and get out there.
That's a time-consuming sport.
It is. But you're outdoors. You are in the outside. You're getting out and about, getting fresh air. So I do try and golf. I don't golf nearly as much as I wish I did, but I try and do that.
So
it's a really
I heard
good
you're looking
break.
for a golf buddy. I heard you're always looking for a golf buddy, a female golf buddy, like college, when you were in college.
Some of my college friends came up and played with me, and it was really fun. Because, when you play with your peers, they really kind of push you to be better. But, and then I do like to ski in the winter. So try and get out of the factory.
Yeah. I think you're going to come out with Maine's first golfing bar or something. It'll be very cool.
That's the Bixby Bar.
Yeah. That's the healthy bar. I love it.
Yeah, we have one called Birdie.
Oh, really?
It's golf themed.
That's cool. See, that's what I love is all your stuff has a story
No one understands what that means, but that's okay.
That's why we do our talk. But this is a fun thing. I know that Erin Nabali has her Places and Spaces show, and tell us what's going on over here.
Yeah, that's Mr. Rennie and Colin, the host for Places and Spaces. So Rennie's is one of our amazing partners. They've really helped us grow, and they're incredibly supportive of Maine-based companies, and they are on this show called Places and Spaces, which is on, I think, NBC in Maine. And the Rennie Corporation said, can we come to the factory and have, Mr. Rennie work in the factory, like Lucille Ball, and I was just like,
That's funny.
sure, we can make
So
that
was he
happen.
stomping on,
Oh my gosh,
blueberries?
So the two of them, we put them making Needhams and wrapping candy bars.
That's great.
And it was one of the funniest things I think I've ever seen. It's gonna air soon. You should watch it. It's
When
so
is it airing?
funny.
Do you know?
I wish I knew the details. I don't, but
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll announce it soon. But it was really funny. And then Mr. Rennie was just like, "Wow, there's a lot that goes into this," and I was just like, "Yeah, there is."
Yeah.
It was fun. It was really fun though, and they're so down to earth. And just a great company. You know, another family-owned and run company.
And they're neighbors here, and they're very good supporters of the theater and everything. So, so this is you and I doing our podcast a couple of years ago when we had just first met, and it was the best thing ever because out came Kate with her car with all this candy. I don't think anyone's ever showed up at my house with that much candy, and we had such a blast. So if you ever want to listen to Kate's story on the podcast, you can go head over to Mumbai to Maine and watch that there. But that was a really great podcast. I learned so much about how to build a business from you, and it was wonderful. You're a great entrepreneurial resource for the state of Maine. So
I definitely
hope you know
try
that.
and share all the resources that I've found. I think a lot of people aren't even aware of some of these free resources. Again, free. There's a lot of support if you want it and if you find it. And I think that one of the things that I've always believed is you don't know the answers on your own. So why not look for help and try and find answers through your peer group or through various business support groups. So
I've actually listened to that podcast 3 times, and I've
3
written
times?
notes as to
Really?
everything
That's
you
funny.
did in the order you did it and who you reached out to, because I thought, why am I reinventing this? Kate's already done all the homework, so I'm just going to take notes.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that.
And that's great, and that's how we all learn and grow in this state. That's why the state is known for its entrepreneurial ethos, right? We all support each other and also kind of learn from one another, which is great. So I cannot wait to open one of these bags of candy tonight and try that. So what is in that? That
so
brittle?
that's the beer brittle with Allagash, our collaboration that I mentioned earlier.
That's so good.
I think we all know craft beer is a very well-established thing at this point. And so I was thinking about a way to intersect it with candy, and we were looking at how do we go into. So there's chocolate and then there's candy, and so candy is like a cooked product versus chocolate. So peanut brittle, is very American, and peanut brittle and beer seem to go together, and so I started out, buying Allagash at Hannaford and prototyping.
What a fun night that was in your kitchen.
Well, and it was a team effort with our team. Yeah. So we did a lot of R&D, and then it got to the point where I said, there must be a way to buy like kegs, right? Than bottles.
Yeah.
So I actually networked in with Luke's Lobster, had a contact into Allagash, and they put me into contact with Allagash. Then I said, "Hey, can I buy kegs for my production?" And it was really funny. They were just like, "What are you doing with what are you going to do with this?" So they've ended up being just a great partner. Again, they're much bigger than we are, so I think sometimes it's like it's funny. They came to tour and they were just like, "Oh, you break that up by hand?" I was just like, yeah. And they were like, "Oh, are you doing this just to show us?" And I said, "No, we do that all the time." Just like that. So it was really fun because, some of these companies are very automated, and then they come and they see the artisan approach.
Yeah, and I love that you've stuck to that. It's kind of neat for them to see how their products are being
it was awesome
sort of
too
used.
because I got to show them the process, and then, I'm very particular about ingredients, and so the organic cane sugar that we source is from a regenerative farm in Brazil, because cane sugar is a whole product into itself that is really shady. You can go read all about it. So I was, if we're going to use amazing cacao, want to honor those beans with really good sugar. So I did a whole research on that sustainable process of the cane sugar from Brazil. So, yeah.
That's
So
so cool.
they were really interested to learn all about kind of our sourcing. And process. So.
And what I love about supporting your work is then we end up supporting another Mainer's work. And you know, these wonderful collaborations that you have, and you come up with these innovative pieces. It's like, as a Mainer, when I buy your stuff, I think, oh wow, I'm supporting someone else in Maine, like Maine Grains or Allagash, because you've worked out with them.
There's so many cool companies in Maine. It's just really an honor to be able to work with them and collaborate, and then you know, being part of the Maine Made program, having that logo on our product is really cool.
Yeah,
really
and I love the fact that we are going to end tonight on a really sweet note, pun intended.
This is
Look
our
at that.
new packaging that is coming soon. I'm really excited about our new line of, we'll call them just plain chocolate bars. So we have our Bixby Bars. Those are like candy bars. This is like a good old chocolate bar, and I don't know if you can see, but it's imprinted with our octopus, and that's actually a book plate from 1898, I think. So Bixby is my great-great-grandparents' last name, and that was their book plate that's imprinted on our product.
That's
and then,
so cool.
We, again, a lot of feedback. That was like a comment we made earlier. Everyone was just like, I just want a plain dark bar with Maine sea salt. So that's what we're coming out with.
We got that. And I'm really interested in trying the oat milk one. I think that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I think the oat milk one is going to be really fun. And then we added the creme brulee as a permanent bar for the portfolio. And then, the almond, you know, everyone said we just want a bar with almonds. So
it's great.
Really simple, which is not necessarily my style usually. But I listen to the feedback.
So, Kate, in the last 10 years, with everything you've done, right?
Yeah.
From where we started with your first Bixby Bar lineup to this today, like, and everything that's happened in the last 10 years, like, what do you feel, like, what were the most important lessons you kind of learned as being an entrepreneur and a tastemaker and a Mainer?
I think one of the things that I've had to really learn is that everything just takes time. You know, I think I thought I might have been in a different spot than I am, but you have to say, okay, this is just how long the path is taking, and that's been challenging for me. But I think also, you know, just the grittiness, because while this seems really fun, there are really challenging moments, and certainly you have to be able to persevere and you know, keep going. So I think that's been the real thing that I've had to do, you know, just kind of be like, okay, a no maybe isn't a no, always a no. It could maybe be a yes sometimes down the road. So, and you don't always hit it out of the ballpark, you know. I think you have to keep trying and keep innovating. So that's been my big lesson. Just trying to take it as it comes, right?
Yeah, and you're also moving forward with everything you come out with. You're always pushing the boundaries of chocolate and chocolate making.
Yeah, the warp speed.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's nobody in Maine who makes the grit and grind look as glam as you, because always look, you're so well put together. You're as perfectly looking as your chocolate does, which is great. Really, I don't think I've ever caught you on a day where you just look like Lucille Ball in the middle of all the grapes, you know? Like, you always look great. Yeah, but thank you so much for being here tonight. This was so much fun. We learned so much about just the whole Bixby chocolate evolution and how you've grown through it as an entrepreneur, and you've moved the whole state forward. Yeah. So we are going to have some Q&A time here with our guests. So what we would love to do is, if you wouldn't mind, just repeating any questions that anyone might have, so that we can get you on tape. And please stick around, folks, because Kate is actually not just very glamorous, but also very generous with her chocolate. So everything you see is up for grabs tonight in terms of a tasting. So please feel free to come by after and take photo ops and do some tastings as well, if you feel comfortable. But I'm going to hand over the floor to all of you. So feel free to raise your hand and ask Kate anything you have in mind. Go ahead.
I love the new look. Did you work with a specific graphic designer or a company?
Sure. So we work with.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. The question was, do we work with a specific graphic designer to develop this new packaging? I'm a woman-owned company, so I like to support other women-owned businesses. So there's a woman-owned designer. Her name is Molly Welch, and she has her own company called All Over It, I think is the name of it,
Yeah.
And she designed our original, like one of our original iterations of the Bixby Bar packaging way back in the day. And then she branched off on her own and we reconnected. And I talked about like, we had to transition for supply chain reasons actually out of our original envelope. And I said, you know, I want to incorporate kind of our look, but make it kind of abstracted art-ish, but still really clean and readable. And she just really executed that quite well. Thank you. Yes?
Do you import the cacao in the pods or the wet beans?
Great question. So we import the dried fermented beans.
So it's already fermented when you import?
Yes, yeah. I've only ever been able to buy a pod like for an event from Puerto Rico.
Wow,
like
that's so
through
cool.
Etsy randomly. But I don't think you can get wet fruit.
You couldn't import it wet and then do the fermentation?
No, because I don't think it would survive the travel. And then, I mean, don't quote me on this, but I think that there's actually an FDA law that it all has to come in really through the Port of New Jersey or the Port of Los Angeles, and they have to like inspect the cocoa beans. It's quite a process, actually. So all the East Coast cocoa goes through New Jersey to like this one port. Yeah, we get it from the Maine Sea Salt Company. So it's in Machias, yeah. Steve is an amazing salt guru. He's like the granddaddy of the salt movement, the artisan salt movement. And I said, well, we have to promote Maine sea salt and the terroir, I call it, of like terroir of Maine. So we buy so much Maine sea salt. It's a lot of salt, but he's great. Yeah, he's a great, and again, another like Maine company that you just be like, wow, he should really be more recognized in some way. But
Well, you celebrate all his salt, which is good.
yeah,
It's in almost
we
everything
celebrate
you
a
make.
lot of
yeah.
his salt.
So that's great.
But yeah, yes.
When you first started out, did you have specific growth goals, or did you reach a point where you realized you had to scale up significantly, and how did you deal with that?
That's a
Yeah,
good question,
it's a really good question. So the question was about scaling and growth rate. So it's been a challenge. I think I wanted to grow in my mind faster than maybe we did at times, but there's always been silver linings that I've found in retrospect, and not, going on some rocket ship of, and some, definitely made some mistakes for sure, where, some of the grocery business, we'll call it like big grocery, is not a great partner to small businesses. So it's been hard to kind of find the right partners. And I think scaling is such a great question. It's a delicate balance. Definitely, certain products have taken off like crazy, and then it's always like we're trying to catch up on how to scale it. So like Needham's were a really great example where we were like hand cutting them, and that was not a sustainable model. And then I found this like machine that was used for some weird random other product, and then we like tested it and it worked, and it's literally like a thing with a guitar string that helps us cut it. So like really random workarounds, but like I constantly work on like scaling opportunities. I always look at our kind of different lines and like our capacity, and I look at what's next for scaling. And it's definitely a process. I mean, I think that, and sometimes you don't know what to do first. You want the product to really prove itself before you overinvest in capital expenditure, but then sometimes it's like so successful, and then you're like backpedaling, saying, well, how do I keep up with demand? And Another really interesting example was just because our product was so innovative, some of the machinery that's on the market doesn't apply or couldn't work for our recipes. And I was told, like, just change your recipe. And I was just like, well, that's actually not the point. So through Maine Technology Institute, we were able to get funding in a grant form to have the University of Maine Engineering Department to develop like a special cutter, which we still use today. And so that was a really great workaround that, I'm pretty sure we're the only people that cut in this way. in a small batch
so cool.
way. And again,
Yeah.
the answer always seems to be just more small batches.
But that's very innovative that you got MTI to get the engineers to figure it out.
Oh yeah, yeah. And
I
when
think
we were
that's very
talking
cool.
about how like food is sort of not really well funded, I have a really interesting story. Like I met early on with someone and they were just like, you're never gonna get funded by MTI because you're not like a technology company. And I was just like, well, but I'm really innovative, which I thought was the point of this whole effort. And then they have like very specific channels, and we went in through process engineering so everyone's trying to put you in a little peg, and you just have to figure out how to fit into the peg that they're trying to put you in. So that's like been my theory.
Awesome.
Yes.
You had a picture early on, I think with your dad, on your tent, and it was, on the ground was all the cocoa beans.
Mm-hmm.
And I wondered, where, was that in Belize? And what part of the process was that? Were they just drying them at that point?
Yeah, so I'm trying to reflect. I think the question was on the process of beans with some pictures with my dad. So my dad's been really fun. He's gone with me on cocoa sourcing trips, and he's just had a blast doing that. We went to Guatemala. I believe those pictures were from Guatemala or possibly Costa Rica. So there's a couple steps. There's the cutting down the pods, opening the pods, taking out the wet beans, and then the wet beans have to be fermented, usually in boxes. So I think there was a fermentation picture. And then after fermentation, you have to imagine in those fermentation boxes, it is very odoriferous and it smells funky. I mean, like fermentation. And they're warm. The beans are hot in that process. And then after fermentation, the beans are taken out and put on drying racks. Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's the drying hut. So, and it's really hot in there, and it's covered with sort of, I think, plastic sheeting.
Yeah.
It depends on the origin, really, their infrastructure. So when I visited Haiti, for example, there was one central fermentation area, and 1,700 different farmers brought their beans to this central fermentation center. And in Guatemala, it's different because the landscape is so undulating, a lot like the Avatar movie. It's crazy. It's very mountainous. So they actually found that because of the distance you have to travel, that they're building fermentation sets kind of at the farm because of the transportation issues. So I think it really depends on origin and also infrastructure. So Belize has more infrastructure. My theory is it used to be a British colony. Nestle used to buy a certain percentage of beans from there, and so they left some infrastructure, whereas other country origins, have not had as much investment.
I was in Costa Rica last fall, and they had tiny little, they call them plantations, but they were families, and they had like 20 families got together, just what you were saying.
Right. It really kind of depends on the. It can go down to the town or the village, because in Guatemala there was a lot of women farmers too, which was really cool to see. Because there's a lot of Mayan culture, so they actually, some of the women gave me some amazing textiles that they wear in that culture. So yeah, it kind of depends on the specific origin.
So most of it comes from Guatemala.
Our beans, I would say about 70% are coming from Dominican Republic, and then the rest would be Guatemala, Belize, and Haiti. Belize is one of the most expensive beans really in the market. It's just a high quality, delicious bean that has become, and they don't make that much. They don't grow that much. So it's kind of like the Pinot Noir of chocolate. So Belize, you know, is very special, but it's not for your everyday chocolate production. So like for our baking chips and whatnot, we usually use a blend of Dominican Republic and Haiti, for example.
Did the pandemic affect your getting your product?
We've definitely experienced a roller coaster of supply chain. I think containers out of Haiti are a little bit hit or miss. Guatemala was actually impacted by the hurricanes, so their crop was pretty much reduced to very little. So we're waiting on this next crop to be able to get more Guatemalan beans. They didn't have enough to get their organic certification, so I couldn't buy their beans. Yeah, because of that third-party cert.
You could write a whole cookbook,
Yeah.
like a narrative story cookbook about
It's,
all
but
this.
it's a
kinda
really
cool.
it's a really great question. I mean, I think it's an agricultural product, so it really kind of depends on climate and all of that.
Inflation.
Yes.
I didn't realize that you had so many different products. You know, I've had the bars and the bites. How do we get, or where do we find
Yeah.
all of these products?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. So the question was, we have a lot of products, and I concur. We've really grown our portfolio, and a lot of it was just some like dreams, honestly. Like I wanted to make truffles, which are in these boxes, and that was really having our team come on board. Our chef Bonnie came, and we worked for like a winter trying to develop a collection of bonbons, and then I constantly innovating. I just try and find like interesting new products. The best place to buy the widest portfolio collection would be on our website, but then there's so many amazing stores, especially in Demerscata, that carry our products, as well as Rising Tide and Rennie's, and I'm trying to think. There's just a lot, yeah.
So the online.
Online would be the biggest option, yeah.
Yeah, I
Yes.
use online a lot to ship out.
With a tight labor market, are you having trouble getting workers?
So the question was the tight labor market. Are we having trouble getting workers? So I think the last 2 years was the most similar in amount of like physical work that I've done since starting the company. Whereas back on the line, it's been wild and woolly, as we'll say. And like my parents and I did a lot of fulfillment of our website, because at one point like it became all e-commerce based business when every other channel stopped ordering, and then it all went online, and then we were like the shipping team. It's rough, yes. It is a challenge. I hope we're gonna find a way out. I think it's an interesting time. It's getting a little better, I think.
You have about 10,
Yeah.
right? 10 in your team?
Yeah, we were at 12, and then 2 people are leaving. So we're back down to 10. And pre-pandemic, we were at 25. So it's been a rough little patch of lack of full staff. But
And nobody stopped eating chocolate through the
No one
pandemic.
stopped eating chocolate,
Everyone ate
no,
chocolate
no.
and sourdough bread. So
yeah, it's a particular issue I think that Maine has, frankly, like just low population. I'm hopeful that it will get better. Yes.
Speak a little bit briefly about your time in the Food Incubator
Yeah.
and sort of like in the requirements to
Repeat that.
Yeah, sure. So the question was about a food incubator. So I think there are still a couple in the state, although I'm not 100% on that. But it's the concept of a food incubator is pretty great. It's to help start businesses have shared space, because commercial kitchen space is pretty expensive and challenging to find. And when we started, we shared like a hallway with Heiwa tofu, which is like the best tofu. Everyone
Ever.
should check out Heiwa tofu. And Jeff was there making his tofu. Yeah, we're still really good friends. But I think the beauty of that was just that peer networking you could do. And same thing with that accelerator program. I'm still friends with some of the people that were in that accelerator with me. And you never know what you need to run by another person kind of going through the same muck, as I call it. Like if you're down in the trenches, there's someone else kind of going through the similar process. And it was really funny because like Jeff from Heiwa Tofu was getting certified organic, and he was like asking me all about it. So you can share similar knowledge points and resources. So.
At what stage did you enter that, and what was the sort of barrier to entry? Was there like a
Yeah, well, I backed into that. So the question was, at what stage did we go into the food incubator? So originally in New York State, where we first started, we were in 500 square feet of rented space because I couldn't do it out of my mom's kitchen. I tried to see if that would be like legal, but it wasn't in the right zoned area. But in Maine, there's like cottage industry zoning that you could look into. But so, and then my parents wanted to move to Maine, so we were like doubling down on we're gonna move to Maine, and we had a spot figured out and located, and we put down deposit, and I like paid for a new floor, and we were coming up with U-Haul trucks. I remember my uncle, I like told Cherie this story. My uncle like took time off work to help us move, my mom's brother, and we like show up with the U-Haul. And there was this like police officer that came, and he was just like, I'm coming to you as a citizen. I'm not coming to you as a police officer, but like this building is about to go into bankruptcy. I just had to tell you. And I was just like,
Wow.
Oh, really? And he was like, yeah, I'm not kidding. And I was just like, whoa. So I like emergency called, and I knew no one in Maine really at that time, but I called the guy that I told you was head of economic development at the time for Rockland. And he answered the phone, and along with the building inspector, they both answered their cell phones on like a weekend. And I was just like, this is crazy. I'm here. I don't know what to do. And he was just like, well, there's this food incubator in Belfast. Maybe you could check that out. And I called them, and they answered the phone again. Like, I don't know why anyone was answering my phone calls on a weekend, but they did.
Because it's Maine.
Yeah, because we were ready to like turn around and go back.
Because you had a big order due for
yeah,
Whole Foods.
I had to like start producing for Whole Foods, and
Yeah.
it wasn't about to be like, hey, sorry, I can't make your order.
I moved to Maine.
Yeah, so
yeah.
the food incubator was like, well, we have this kitchen, we could get you hooked up, and yeah, it's a fun. It's one of those moments where you look back where it could have been the end right there, where it just, your horse was shot from underneath you, and it could have just been like, that's it, I'm done, sorry. But yeah, I just kind of called a bunch of people freaking out and
found
tried
a new
to
horse.
problem resolve. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but the food incubator, I think, is a great model. Unfortunately, that food incubator didn't survive. So that caused a lot of heartache for the people that were renting there. That was another horse shot from underneath you. So, but if you can find a food incubator that would work, I would definitely pursue that avenue. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Just one more question. How often do you go on these bean buying trips, and when you go, what are you looking for in the bean? Is it the color, is it the fat content, is it the size?
Sure. So the question is, how often do I go on bean sourcing? So pre-pandemic, I was trying to go once a year, and really looking for the organic origin, and one where we could kind of determine the farmer's living quality and infrastructure and just trying to learn about the origin. You know, we're looking for flavor, we're looking for quality, we're looking for that organic certificate, which is hard to come by. We're looking for interesting new flavor profiles, looking for kind of all of those different things.
Are you looking for good partnerships?
Yeah,
too?
the
You need
color,
to be
the
able
color
to-
was an interesting question. That's more the genetic, I would say. So a lot of those Central American origins are more of the rarer forms of the cocoa tree versus that, like, there's one generic tree that's been mass produced and mass populated for the big cocoa plantations predominantly in West Africa. So that's a great question. Like, the genetics even are different. Kind of like heirloom apples, similar to that. Yeah. Yes.
Do the beans spoil? Once they're fermented, how long do they stay viable?
So the question was, how long do the beans stay viable? That's a really great question. So they need to be stored in a cool, dry environment. They come in these sacks that help kind of prevent from pest infestation, and it's really interesting to see the different origins approach to that. But they're called grain pro bags that the beans come wrapped in, so that helps with the shelf life. But under, you know, proper storage, I think they have a very long shelf life. But we don't hold on to them that long. We're kind of making chocolate pretty quickly, or making cocoa nibs also. Yeah.
That's why I wanted to say something about your chocolate, is that I actually use your cocoa nibs to bake brownies and to bake into our chocolate cake. So it's like I actually use your products in their sort of the most basic form, not just your candy, but your actual
Right. So the
chocolate.
cocoa nib is actually, I call it the chocolate before chocolate.
It's so tasty.
It's just the meat of the bean that goes to be used to make chocolate. And cocoa nibs are kind of having a little bit of a moment because they're keto and paleo and sugar-free. So they have like a nutty, crunchy, very chocolatey taste. So cocoa nibs are, interestingly, like a product into itself, but it's really an ingredient to make chocolate, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're good tonight. I think everyone wants to just come up and meet you and possibly get a taste of
Have
things.
some chocolate.
So, yeah. Well, thank you everyone for being here tonight and hanging out with us a little later than usual. I want to thank Kate
Thank you for having me.
breaking away from the factory
chocolate
and having
factory.
a night out and teaching us about so much. And
Absolutely.
thank you to Damon and Gary and the whole team here tonight for supporting us and getting this whole show up tonight, despite a movie this evening. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thank
for
you, everyone.
being